Episode 15, Hermes Psychopompos, the architect of consciousness and the guide through the Bardo, the weaver of meaning, the lord of translation, and the movement of the living logos. Imagine you are standing at the edge of a vast silent ocean, and behind you the world you knew is fading away, and in front of you you have a depth so absolute that it feels like blindness. You are at the final border. And in this moment, you don't need a messenger, you don't need a trickster, you need a guide. Ancient traditions warn us that the greatest danger after death is not punishment, it is fragmentation. It is the risk of the soul shattering into 1,000 pieces of forgotten memories and unintegrated fears. But there is one force in the cosmos that holds the universal license to walk through this darkness and keep the thread of your identity unbroken. And he is Hermes Psychopompos. He is the only one who can enter the University of Hades and return to the light of Zeus. And today we reveal the hidden side of Hermes, the architect of consciousness who ensures that your death is not disappearance, nor a fragmentation, but a translation. Hermes, from the verb eiro, the art of joining, the living logic. As we said in the episode of Hermes, Hermes is the god of connection. And logos, it is the maths of motion, is the speech, is the connection, it is the act of joining mind to world, thought to form, and ultimately mortal to divine. When we die, the physical threads of our existence are cut. Hermes, as the Psychopompos, ensures that the thread of meaning remains unbroken. He is the Iremis, the inventor of the joining that makes the universe intelligible even when the body falls away. The Caduceus, the alchemy of universal balance and DNA. The staff Hermes carries, the Caduceus, the Kyrikion, is the metaphysical blueprint of this connection. The myth tells us that Hermes saw two serpents fighting in a deadly struggle, and he placed his staff between them, and they immediately ceased their strife. Entwining around the rod in eternal harmony. So the two serpents represent the primordial dualities, male and female, binding and liberation, ascent and descent. And the rod is the axis mundi, the bridge connecting the above, Zeus, with the below, Hades. And the wings are the transcendence of the air, of spirit. And this pattern is not just mythic, it is biological and it is energetic. It is the very DNA helix, the code of life itself. It is the structure of the chakras, the psychic centers through which energy flows. Hermes is the architect of the very matrix of consciousness. Pan, the double nature of the logos in the afterlife. In our previous analysis, we saw that from Hermes we have Pan, and Pan is the twofold nature of the logos. In Pan, we see the true face of the logos after death. So we have the upper half, which is smooth, divine, and luminous, and this is the divine logos, where we have clarity, truth, and the higher mind, and the lower half, which is godlike and tragic, and this is the deceptive logos, the illusion, the chaos, and raw emotion. When the soul leaves the body, it encounters Pan in the most visceral way. If it has lived without the guidance of Hermes, without understanding the joining, the eating of things, it experiences panic. Panic is the shock of confronting reality without the translator of the logos. As the Psychopompos, Hermes is the one who helps the soul navigate this shock. But for the soul that has woven its consciousness with truth, the transition is not a panic, but an entry into the divine half of Pan. Syneidesis, the sum of what we have seen. The Psychopompos guides us according to our syneidesis, what we call consciousness. But to understand the word, we must look at the Greek prefix syn. Even if you don't speak Greek, you live with this prefix every day. Think of words like synthesis, placing things together to create a whole, or syntax, arranging words together to create meaning, synesthesia, feeling senses together, synonym, names that share the same meaning. Syn means together with, or the totality of something. It is the collective force that we saw in the name of Hades with the alpha athistiko. When you combine syn with eidesis from ida, which means to have seen and understood, we get syneidesis. So consciousness is the total syn. It is the act of holding all the fragments of your life together in one gaze. As the Psychopompos, Hermes is the master of this universal syntax. He shows us that what you face after death is the sum of your connections. If your life was a series of disconnected fragments, this transition feels like chaos. But if you have achieved synthesis and syneidesis, if you have woven your experiences into a coherent truth, then Hermes can guide you with clarity. He is the one, so to speak, who presents your transcript into the University of Hades. He does not judge. It is your own level of syneidesis that determines your path. As Heraclitus said, ethos, anthropo, daemon. Your character, the way you have synthesized your soul, is your only destiny. The Bardo and the art of interpretation. This brings us to a crucial parallel with the Bardo, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and also the mysterious Orphic gold tablets. In the Bardo, this intermediate state, the soul is bombarded with visions, and the Tibetans teach that all of these monsters or deities are not external entities. They are reflections of your own mind, your own syneidesis. So this is the ultimate hermeneutic challenge. Hermes, the god of interpretation, is the one who comes and whispers to the soul, do not fear the monsters. They are your own unintegrated thoughts. Do not be seduced by the illusions. They are your own desires. So he's the clear light that helps you translate this chaotic imagery of the Bardo back into the language of the spirit. The Greeks created physical tools for this transaction, the Orphic gold tablets. These were thin gold leaves placed in the hands or the mouths of the dead, and they were kind of like instructions, manuals for the soul, and they contained precise instructions, a script to be recited when facing the guardians of the underworld. One of the most famous instructions warns the soul. You will find a spring on the left of the house of Hades, and next to it a white cypress. Do not approach this spring, because this is the spring of forgetfulness, of Lethe. You will find another one, with cold water flowing from the lake of memory, Mnemosyne. Guards stand before it. Tell them, I am a child of the earth and the starry heaven, but my race is heavenly. So this is Hermes' final lesson in the syntax. To survive the Bardo, the soul must remember its heavenly origin and choose memory over forgetfulness. Hermes is the one who ensures you don't drink from the wrong spring. He is the one who reminds you that your identity is not your earthly story, but your celestial essence. And this is why Socrates makes a statement that has echoed throughout the centuries, that philosophy is the practice of death. To the uninitiated, this sounds totally grim, but in the light of Hermes, it is the most liberating truth of all. If the transition through the Bardo is an encounter with your own Syneidesis, your total seeing, then your whole life is a rehearsal for that moment. Every time you choose awareness over distraction, every time you choose irene, peace, connection over polemos, war, fragmentation, you are practicing the syntax of the soul. Soul. The depth of your consciousness at the moment of death determines the analogy of what you will perceive on the other side. If you haven't seen the truth while alive, the light of the Bardo will be blinding and terrifying. If you have practiced the Logos, the transaction is a recognition. You don't see something new when you die. You see the essence of what you have already understood. Your character is not just your fate on earth, it is your very vision in the afterlife. The cosmic architecture, the symphony of the gods. We have reached the limit of the guide's office, and Hermes has handed us the golden passport. He has explained the syntax of the soul, and he has prepared us for the ultimate university. And before we go to the last episode of this series, the final vision of the myth of air, we must look back at the forces that have shaped our journey. We have not just been studying myths here, we have been mapping the architecture of the soul. Each god represents a specific frequency, a necessary function of the living cosmos. We have Zeus, the mind, the expansive sky, the intelligible light, and the principle of order of the cosmos. We have Hera, the principle of form and the sacred boundaries that allow life to manifest. We have Poseidon, the realm of emotion, the turbulent waters of becoming, and the currents of the unconscious. We have Hades, the depth, the invisible root, and the great university where the truth is stored. We have Hermes, the connection, the logos, the weaver of meaning who guides us between worlds. We have Athena, the strategic wisdom, the crystal clarity of the mind. We have Apollo, the harmony, the tuning of the soul, and the light of truth. We have Artemis, the integrity, the wild, untouched nature, and the internal sovereignty of the self. We have Aphrodite, the magnetic force of attraction and the harmony that makes the world beautiful and lovable. We have Ares, the dynamic energy, the force of becoming through struggle, and the protection of the vital spark. We have Hephaestus, the divine craftsman, the internal fire that transforms raw matter into art. We have Hestia, the stillness of the center, the sacred hearth that holds the essence of the self steady. And then we have Dionysus, the life force itself, the divine madness that breaks the ego to reveal the eternal spirit. The integration from the Pantheon to the One. As we have seen, the gods are not outside of us, they are the internal syntax of our being. And this is why, as we said, Socrates said that philosophy is the practice of death, because it is the art of balancing all these forces while we are alive, so that when we stand before the spindle of necessity, we are not strangers to our souls. If you have understood the mind of Zeus, the depth of Hades, the connection of Hermes, you have built a golden body that can withstand the transition, and you have achieved Syneidesis, the synthesis of all these divine frequencies. The final vision, the myth of air. Now we're kind of ready. We have the map, we have the guide, we have the instructions of the Orphic tablets. We leave the world of individual gods and enter the great machine. We are going to follow the soldier Air, who died on the battlefield, and instead of drinking from the spring of forgetfulness, he was allowed to watch the entire process of the soul's judgment, the cosmic motion of the spheres, and the terrifying responsibility of choosing a new life. The myth of air is from Plato's Republic, at the very end of Plato's Republic. And this is where we're going to close the circle. We move from Hermes the Psychopompos to the vision itself. And next episode is going to be the grand finale, the spindle of necessity, the choice of the soul, and the great return.